can we try and reconnect that phone call?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Why would this be? I can't hear him at all. Okay.
Oh, boy.
Well, Mr. Tinker, tell the audience, who is John Tinker?
Who is John Tinker? Well, most people would know me in association with 1969 Supreme Court case, Tinker v. Des Moines. I was 15 years old and sued the Des Moines public school system on a First Amendment ground. I'm getting quite a bit of echo here, and it's making it hard to form coherent sentences.
I can't hear you at all.
Okay. I can hear both of us.
John, before we get into the whole thing about the First Amendment and the Supreme Court case, tell the audience, who is John Tinker today? What do you do?
Well, today I'm the station manager for a small community radio station in Fayette, Missouri. It's located right here in our home, which also is the old public school building. So we have an old public school building here, a beautiful 3-story brick building with an antenna on the top, and we've got software that keeps our radio station on the air and a couple of computer networks. I'm a software guy myself, so that keeps me pretty busy. But I'm also developing a website that I've been working on for about 17 years right now. It's an ambitious website. I have news feeds that are automated and cross-referenced to each other. So I've got about 20,000 right now of different, they're basically search arguments that go out into the internet and get news items, and then I run them through a sort of a filter so that I try to keep some of the junk out. But I try to provide a reasonably good index to current news to a global audience. We have 20,000 topics that covers pretty much the whole globe and lots of things within it. So that all keeps me busy. We heat with wood, so I also cut a lot of wood. You really want to know how I spend my day?
Okay, well, I got a couple of questions for you before we get started. How'd you wind up in a schoolhouse?
Well, I always wanted a big building. Now, I tell this story, and sometimes people think I'm kidding a little too much, but when I was a little kid, going to kindergarten, actually, and they took us on a tour of our school building in a little town called Atlantic, Iowa. And I just loved the building. I kind of they introduced us to the janitor of the building, and they explained how he was really the most important person here. I mean, the teachers are important, of course, the students are important, but the janitor, he makes it all work. And so I have a real early love affair with large buildings, and I had some in a small town in Iowa, a different town, but they were all in pretty bad shape. So my sister was a physician here in this small town in Missouri, and she said, "Hey, the public school's for sale. You should come down and look at it." And by coincidence, that happened during a little window of a few years where I actually had a real job, and I was able to afford to buy this building. So I love it to pieces. It's a very, very substantial building. My neighbor, she died a few years ago at 95 years old. She said, yeah, when it was built, it was the best building in town, and I believe it. It's a really nice, solid, beautiful building.
It's the kind of building, if there's a hurricane or something, that's where people would go and
there was a tornado in Joplin a few years back. You may have heard of that. And it was devastating. I mean, it killed a whole bunch of people and just wiped out the town. And one of the guys from the University of Missouri in Columbia, who was sort of an expert on some community phase or an emergency coordinator type of specialty, and he had gone down to Joplin. Well, he happened to be up here in my in what we call our kitchen. It's a classroom, but we use it as a kitchen. And we were having a meeting about solar panels that he was promoting. And he said, well, if there were a tornado here, this is the building you'd want to be in. So
yeah.
I don't want to be in a tornado anyway, but
tornado. They don't have hurricanes down there, though. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, also, too, you own a radio station. What do you play? What do you put on the show, on the station?
We have a real mix. Actually, I'm a radio engineer. It was one of my previous incarnations from way back. I always wanted to be a ham radio operator, and I studied hard, and I got my ham radio license. I just, on a lark, kind of took my commercial license and became a chief engineer at a small AM station up in Iowa City. But when I saw the window for the FCC filing for the low-power FM licenses back in 2013, I kind of jumped. Well, it was a delayed jump, but they extended the deadline a couple times because of the government shutdown. And anyway, I got an application in, and by golly, we got the license. So we played. I tested the station with some music from an Andean band that I used to play in up in Iowa, and then I tried out some Chris Hedges speeches and climatology speeches and things like that, but kind of upset some of the community. But then we moved into more of a regular schedule, so we play like jazz overnight, then classical, and then in the morning we do local community announcements and so on in the morning, and then we move into Amy Goodman's Democracy Now!
Very nice.
We play a number of syndicated programs that we get from PRX, and we've got automated scripts, that bring them in. So a lot of it runs by itself, but we do have a nice crew of volunteers here, about a half a dozen community people that are very loyal, dedicated to the radio. It really was a surprise to me to see the dedication that volunteers were willing to put in to it. And so they do their own shows. They do different, whatever kind of music they like. And then my wife, she interacts with PRX quite a bit and is always looking for good stuff. So we do like Backstory was one, open source. We have a basic. Well, the basic rule is that we try not to broadcast crap. I mean, we try to have our news stories be reasonably truthful. We carry Deutsche Welle, which could be considered part of the Atlantic Alliance perspective. It's just like on my website, I use a BBC newsfeed, and I'm thinking, do I really want to do that? But anyway, it opens. We do carry we carry Democracy Now!, so we get that perspective, and then we try to carry a pretty good, basically left progressive point of view. I don't know. We try not to be political explicitly, but I guess it has to do with our own perspective on what makes sense.
So is it a commercial station or non-commercial?
No, non-commercial. We're nonprofit.
Gotcha.
We're organized under a 501c3 that we needed one to apply for this license, and it was very fortunate that a local woman here had one already running called International Educational Resources for Rural Missouri. So it was like a perfect fit, really.
So you're most widely known, though, for Tinker versus Des Moines Board of Education, or Des Moines School District, a landmark civil rights Supreme Court case, right? Tell us, how did that come about?
Well, the Vietnam War became more and more intense in 1965. I was 14 years old at the time. My father, at that time in our life, was working for a Quaker organization called the American Friends Service Committee, and his job title was Peace Education Secretary. So his job was to organize symposia and lectures and all kinds of informational events to get people up to speed on international affairs, basically, on war and peace issues. And so we had quite a bit of information about the war in Vietnam that was contrary to the administration's, the U.S. administration's position. And my parents were lifelong peace activists, and before that, really civil rights activists up in Iowa. My dad actually got asked to leave two different Methodist churches. He was a pastor, a Methodist pastor, a preacher, and because of his civil rights movement activities, he was asked to leave. That happened twice when I was a kid. So then the Quakers invited him to work for them, and that's how he got that job. But anyway, we knew quite a bit about what was going on in Vietnam relative to what the general public knew. And so when the big demonstration, the first big one over the Thanksgiving holiday of 1965 in Washington, D.C., my father organized, or helped organize, a couple of busloads of college students mostly to go to Washington to be part of that big demonstration against the war. And my mother belonged to Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and they were actually part of the coalition of organizations that put these chartered buses together. So I asked if I could go, and my parents agreed that I could go. And so I went to Washington, D.C., and on the way back there was a discussion on us of what we might do to continue to protest against the war, to try to bring awareness to the general public about what was going on with regard to Vietnam. And somebody said that they had heard that there were groups that were going to wear black armbands, which are a traditional symbol of mourning. When somebody dies in your family, you might wear a black armband. So anyway, people thought that was a good idea. I thought it was a good idea. It's non-disruptive. You're not really in anybody's face. You're just wearing that black armband. And so there were four of us, high school students, on those buses, and we all belonged, coincidentally, to a Unitarian youth group. I by then was attending the Quaker meeting, and then after the Quaker meeting, I go to the Unitarian church for the youth group, and I was a member of the Unitarian youth group. We decided as a group, kids, to wear the armbands for two reasons. We were mourning the death of everyone on both sides of the conflict, and we were promoting Robert Kennedy's call for a Christmas truce that year. So one of our high school students wrote up an article for his school newspaper explaining what we were doing. When his faculty advisor saw what he'd written, he got on the phone and called the principal and informed him of what was up, that this was coming along. And did he know about it? No, he didn't. And he got on the phone to the other principals and informed them that it was coming up, and they had a meeting, and they decided to not